What I thought I knew about healthy eating almost killed me. One moment, I was eating meat with every meal. The next moment, whole food, plant-based, a very drastic change overnight. Within 6 months, my cholesterol was down to 115. My LDL was 15, which was as low as they could measure. My triglycerides had fallen to 175. The last time I had my cholesterol checked, it was 96, and my triglycerides were 97. And there's not a drug on the planet that can do that. That is solely through diet. And I'm just utterly amazed that the human body has the ability to heal itself so quickly. You know, I've abused my body for 53 years. I'm currently 59, and I feel better now than I felt when I was 35.
Genetics is not our destiny. Our genes can be directly affected by the food we eat.
We know that you can reverse heart disease with a plant-based diet. We know this. You cannot do it with medication, but you can do it with plant-based diet. And when they ask doctors, why don't you teach people this? They say they don't think people are going to want to do it. It's too difficult. So, well, let them be the judge of that. I think it's too difficult to go under the knife and have my chest cracked open, you know, but give people the chance, the opportunity.
2 weeks after starting the whole food plant-based diet with no oil, my angina had all of a sudden stopped. By the time I went back to my internist, my hemoglobin A1C was coming down, so they took me off the shots. They took me off of the Starlix pills. Within a couple months later, I went off the metformin. The doctor said, I don't think you're diabetic. I don't have any arthritis anymore. I'm enjoying life. I love the food that I'm eating. I would say the bottom line to all my health issues is you don't have to suffer with heart disease and diabetes because it's foodborne illnesses. And if food is what got you into this mess, food can get you out of it.
By definition, a mammal makes milk for its young. And so a horse makes milk perfect for its foal, and a human being makes milk perfect for the infant. And a cow makes milk perfect for a calf. The thing is that we have different nutritional needs when we're young than a calf has. They grow real fast. A little baby calf grows from 60 pounds to 600 pounds drinking milk. If you fed a baby calf human milk, the animal would starve to death. So when people eat baby calf food designed for that accelerated growth, they grow. People get fat.
We know the protein from dairy casein is a cancer promoter on the DNA level. It actually tells your DNA, go ahead and make some cancer.
The earlier you introduce young children to dairy, the higher their risk, about 14-fold higher, to develop a devastating disease called diabetes type 1, which is an autoimmune disease that destroys the pancreas irreversibly.
Dairy calcium has kind of been made into a myth that if I eat cheese or I drink milk and have a good calcium intake from dairy that I'll have strong bones, and that's actually not been proven in the literature at all.
When I look at people and they're drinking all this milk to try to combat the osteopenia and osteoporosis, I tell them that the countries that consume the most dairy have the weakest bones. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, most of Asia didn't have osteoporosis up until recent times, and they didn't drink milk at all.
If you don't drink milk, where are you going to get your calcium? Where do you think the cow gets their calcium, right? They have 1,000-pound skeleton. That's a lot of... They get it from plants, right?
Start every day with Milk's Protein and Milk Life.
The dairy industry says, oh, milk does the body good. We're believing advertising. We're not believing truths.
In 1999, I had that wake-up call. I was diagnosed with both breast and cervical cancer. So the doctor said, you've got to have a mastectomy next week. You got to have a hysterectomy immediately. You got to have chemo. You got to have radiation. And I was like a deer in headlights, and I was like, there's no way.
All of the doctors were pretty clear that they felt that I probably wouldn't live longer than a few months because I had cancerous fluid that had metastasized from my ovaries all the way up to the pleural cavity on my right lung.
Until you've seen a loved one get sick and die in a hospital, or walk through the halls, or been to an intensive care unit, people don't know. I mean, you drown to death when you die of lung cancer. I mean, horrific, horrific deaths.
The war on cancer under President Nixon started in 1971. The incidence rate, that is the number of people that get cancer, was 1 in 8. The survival rate was about 27, 28%, which means a little more than 70% of the patients died. Just a couple of years ago, the National Cancer Institute published their latest figures. The incidence is much higher, and the survival rates are basically unchanged, around 31, 32%.
It's a travesty that people continue to suffer and die when we have the tools, we have the knowledge, the system is such, it just doesn't reward that kind of behavior. It doesn't make anybody money.
I think that the assumption there is that there's a rational, helpful, benign process that's running the show in government, and there isn't. So what's running the show is a vicious free-for-all, and that nobody's really interested in helping Americans get healthy.
Nobody makes any money sending you home to eat your vegetables and drink your water. And I think that's probably the base root of the whole problem.
In our morning rounds, how where you live affects your odds of surviving cancer. New government data shows people in the South have the highest risk of dying from cancer. Kentucky ranks #1.
Cancer, as defined by modern medicine, is essentially a wild, erratic cell that's growing without control. And it's very active metabolically.
First up, chemotherapy is standard for most breast cancer patients.
I think the whole chemotherapy industry is very sad. It's based on an assumption that I find to be flawed. The way that cancer is assumed to work is once started, progressively gets worse because of certain events that come along, like mutations. Therefore, that leads to the idea, well, how do we treat people with cancer? If we can't get those cancer cells to go back and being normal, what are we going to do? We're going to kill them. And how best to kill them except to create some chemical that can zap those tumors. That's called chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is not working for the most part.
The focus on cancer seems to be early detection. And we have Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I would like to see Breast Cancer Prevention Month. And that could be for all types of cancer, not just breast cancer.
My mom and aunts had breast, cervical, uterine, or ovarian cancer. They did the surgery, the mastectomies and the hysterectomies. They did the chemo, they did the radiation, and I really saw what that did. I saw that not only did it not heal, but it made the situation worse. And I was convinced that many of the people that I loved the most in the world had actually died, not as a result of being diagnosed with cancer, but as a result of all of those treatments.
Why do chemo, surgery, and radiation not do well for the most part? Because they do nothing to change the root cause. The biological terrain, the culture medium, if you will, that any disease will grow in, is not functioning properly. It's conducive to growing a cancer cell, for example. Conventional medicine looks at the tumor and says, okay, that's the disease. I don't. I look at the tumor and say, that's a symptom of the disease.
In our research, for example, we showed 40 years ago, we could have a model and we could turn cancer on and off, and it doesn't have anything to do with mutations.
I went to see Dr. Joel Furman, who, to my good fortune, was my primary care physician. And he examined me and we talked, and I just decided, well, it's not going to hurt to ask another person, if there's a chance that I'm going to get through this. And I said, do you think I'm going to survive this? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, that's wonderful, because you're the only one who has said that.
You don't have to be sick. You don't have to wait in line for a terminal illness. There's something you can do about it, and the time to start is now.
The motivating factor for me to adopt a whole food plant-based diet was I didn't want to die. My wife had adopted whole food plant-based ideology for at least 2 to 3 years.
And I did it really purely as for health. I had dragged the family along fairly successfully. My husband was good when he was at home and I was cooking for him.
We hear the term always committing to something 100%. And I think for me, adopting a whole food plant-based diet, I wasn't fully committed.
He was diagnosed in November of 2013 with kidney cancer. turned out to be stage 4 cancer. I think at that moment, I never had to nag at him again. I never had to convince him. He was completely on board.
We were told that given what it was and the type of cancer, renal cell carcinoma, and a fairly aggressive one as to what they were seeing on the tests taken, that would probably be a matter of months that I had to live.
He went through a major surgery to have the kidney removed and many of the lymph nodes around it. And, you know, they were pretty brutal, and they said that, you know, that he might not even survive the surgery because it had gone up his vena cava and they had to clamp that off and he could bleed out. And so that was devastating in itself.
And they explained that chemotherapy and radiation was not effective in controlling or healing or working with renal cell carcinoma. And they said there was current research being done with respect to immune therapy drugs.
He recovered really well from the surgery rather quickly. He was accepted into a trial study, and it was an immune-boosting therapy, and we went down to Vancouver for that. And after the 3rd treatment, it attacked his liver.
So they explained to us that this liver attack, the side effect from the drugs, and the rates that my liver was battling right now could be a fatal episode.
So he was dismissed from the study because it doesn't look good to kill your trial patients, so they basically sent us home to recover from that.
There's no way. I'm not gonna do surgery, chemo or radiation. He said to me, "What do you mean, no? You don't have a choice." He said, "You'll be dead in 6 months." I said, well, I'll tell you what. If I'm not dead in 6 months, I'll come back to see you.
Conventional medicine uses the term of 5-year survival of a cancer without a recurrence of the same cancer. You might have another one, but without a recurrence of the same cancer is considered a cure. For me, it really isn't. For me, a cure is when the patient lives the rest of their life, as long as they don't mess up and start doing the bad lifestyle choices that they had.
We did a nationwide survey of a total of 6,500 families. And what came out of that was supporting what we had done initially. And that was the moment in that process we turn away from vegetables and fruits and grains, which we learned had to be the whole form, the intact kind of form, and we put in all the animal foods and all the processed foods. We're making a big mistake. Animal protein can turn on cancer. And the protein that we were using primarily was the main protein of cow's milk.
When you are eating super inflammatory foods, you're eating dairy products, you're eating meat, you're eating eggs, you're eating all these inflammatory foods, processed foods, all these oils you shouldn't be eating, and then you add to that pesticides and all these chemicals that we know can potentially cause cancer, now you're in the perfect storm.
So I continued on with our whole food plant-based diet, and he just got better and better. And with each scan, things were reducing, lymph nodes were shrinking in size. And initially they had said it would be naive to think that this would not spread. And it didn't spread, and it reduced. And it kept reducing to the point where it was radiologically undetectable.
At this 2-year period where you're told plain and simple that you're probably going to die if you make that outset date. You're probably going to get sicker and sicker. And I didn't. And I got healthier and healthier and healthier.
And at 2 years, when he should have died, according to them, he went back to work, full time.
I've never been this healthy in my whole life. And I'm carrying on. What has brought me here this far, this healthy and the way I am, has been adopting whole food plant-based. There's no two ways about it.
My friends and family didn't believe me. They didn't approve. My doctor didn't like it. But when that 6-month mark came, I made that phone call. I want an appointment. When they ran all the tests, and I was completely cancer-free, some of the things that I found from those tests he ran, not only did I not have cancer, but rheumatoid arthritis that I was diagnosed at the age of 27 with, that the doctors had told me then, you could be crippled by this. You could end up in a wheelchair. You're going to have to take drugs for pain management on this. It was gone. I had always had these problems with eczema, psoriasis. My skin looked better than ever. And from a little girl, I was diagnosed with all kinds of allergies. For the first time in my life that I could remember, I had no allergy. Like, this is really something. I realized that this lifestyle had healed my body completely from the inside out.
I'm Pamela Swallow. I just turned 70 this summer, but I've been 18 years cancer-free. I was diagnosed in 1997 with metastatic stage 4 ovarian cancer. My prognosis was horrible, but not everybody's right all the time, and I was determined to live, and I have, and so could you.
I have a major blockage in my right thigh. I have a lot of plaque in, I guess, a major artery. I was trying to find solutions. When I was shooting Captain America in Cleveland, I was going to the Cleveland Clinic, and while I was there, the doctor asked me about the blockage, and then she started telling me about this doctor that could possibly help me, and we went to have lunch with Essie and Ann. They're just such enthusiastic and healthy people. I'd already read his book. I was convinced I need to try this. And I decided I was gonna jump right in. I was a little daunted by okay, no oil, no dairy, no nuts, no sugar, the nose. But I got to it and I started it. I was getting along fine with the diet. I was doing great. In the middle of all this, the movie that I was preparing to do in the spring, the director wanted to see me because he heard I was back in town. He wanted to talk to me about the film. When I left, I got a call later on that evening from my agent. It was like, the director was very concerned about you. They said if you don't gain like 20 pounds between now and the time that movie starts, they're gonna fire you. So, contrary to my health needs, I went back to flesh and not just plant-based diet. I gained the weight back like wham. It just came right back just the way I lost it. My leg cramps came back. I started to snore again. I don't pop up out of bed as energetically as I used to. My regularity changed. My susceptibility for catching things changed drastically. I get tired after I eat. It's just really trippy. It's like, is food supposed to give you energy? I eat now and it's kind of like, I get nap. It's like, so my digestive process is very different. I know that at some point I'm going to go back to it because I know how to do it and I know how I felt when I was doing it, mainly because I know I could do better for myself.
And everything that I was ever taught, everything I'd ever read, basically was telling me, hey, Hispanics have a high percentage of diabetes. I was also led to believe it's in your genes, it's just part of who you are. I was a fast food junkie. My body was telling me, you need that sugar, you need that fat, you need that salt. And so I was going through the drive-thru all the time. My family has been devastated by chronic disease. My mother was diabetic. She had a kidney transplant. She was legally blind. Many, many years of dialysis, many, many years of shots, injections, and pills, and ultimately passed away at the young age of 61 years old. My oldest brother, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He passed in 2002. My twin brother, Joe, he's been diabetic over a decade, and just about 4 months ago, he had a heart attack. And then the youngest brother is Martin. He was diagnosed with diabetes at a young age, in his early teens, 13 or 14 years old. He has had his right leg amputated. He has had a kidney and pancreas transplant. He's legally blind. He does dialysis 3 times a week, and he takes 25 medications every single day. And I was headed down that same path at the age of 43, taking 2 insulin shots, 2 oral medications for diabetes, a high blood pressure medication, as well as a high cholesterol medication. I even asked my doctor, I said, will I ever get off this insulin? And he flat out told me, no, you're going to be on insulin the rest of your life. I was very upset. I was actually quite pissed off because I'd seen what this had done to my family, and now here I was.
until fairly recently, people had a completely wrong view of diabetes. They thought diabetes is caused by eating sugar or eating starch and eating bread. And that was somewhat logical because the carbohydrate in the bread does release glucose, it releases sugar. And so it will make your blood sugar rise. But it turns out that was never the cause of it. Type 2 diabetes is caused by the buildup of tiny microscopic fat particles in the muscle cells. And what happens is, as the fat builds up in the cell, the insulin can no longer bring the glucose inside. So what's the answer? The answer is get that fat out of the cells, the diabetes will improve.
Most of us have no idea where our food comes from.
I started to question where that food was coming from and how that food was raised.
I never made the connection really between what was on my plate and then that was once a living, breathing animal. Once I made that connection, I didn't want to have any part of it.
I don't see animals as food anymore. I see it as complete suffering. And I want people to know that that animal didn't just naturally die and then they package it and it becomes food. That's not how it is. The animal suffered every day of its life. It was beaten, it was tortured, and then it became food for you.
The plight of farm animals is more than ever something that really matters to me. But what also surprised me was how many basic human rights violations exist with the humans in addition to what's happening to the animals.
A lot of milk that we drink actually has a lot of pus or white blood cells in it, largely because a lot of these animals are not treated as well as they ought to be.
You don't have to take a life in order to sustain yours.
Every time we're purchasing something, we're voting with our dollar. So if you choose to eat animal products and you choose to take your dollar and vote for cruelty and harmfulness and death, you're part of the problem then. You're not part of the solution.
I knew right then and there that I didn't want to be part of anything that promoted cruelty.
Informing the public to the truth about what humans are supposed to eat is going to be vital for the future of our health, the future of the environment, the future of animal welfare, and the future of the finances of this country.
Sustainability is becoming more and more an issue. So it's not just the health of people, not just cruelty to animals and whatnot. It's actually an issue of survival.
People are not making the connection that what they're eating is really affecting the environment.
Over a third of the land mass in the world is taken up by livestock agriculture.
If you look at all of the animals that are being raised for consumption, it totals around 70 billion.
Livestock are basically black boxes of inefficiency, right? You pour in huge amounts of feed, of protein, of energy, water, and these animals have the audacity to breathe and move around and waste energy and live their lives. And then only about half of them you can eat, the rest is a skeleton and skin. I mean, it's just like huge amount of resources to get these tiny kind of scraps from them, when we could just be eating the food direct, cut out the middle moo.
We're having a big water shortage in California now. They're rationing water. Long showers, 40 gallons of water. Short showers, 20 gallons. One burger is 4,000 to 18,000 gallons of water to make a third of a pound burger.
75% of the deforestation taking place in the Amazon is because of animal agriculture.
We're raping the land, is really what we are doing. We are taking everything out of the dirt that we want to have in the dirt, the microbes, the organic matter. We are headed towards our dirt not being viable to grow anything.
Most people don't understand that the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases, more than all transportation combined, planes, trains, boats, automobiles, is animal agriculture.
We need to do something right now to start reversing global warming.
Well, I can do something about that right now. I can just stop eating animals.
So when you start thinking of world hunger and you start thinking about all the water that's being wasted and transportation, not to mention the cruelty, you start looking at it from a bigger picture and realizing that your dollar that you're voting with doesn't just affect you, it affects not only your fellow human beings, but also your planet.
So when you start to educate yourself, not just about the way that you feel and about the way the people around you feel, but when you really start to take it all in and you've just started to lean in, oh, you're in all the way.
The formula is clear. You want to eat the foods that promote good health. You want to avoid the foods that contribute to poor health.
Basically, we don't eat anything with a mother or a face.
like most people, I kind of walked away from there going, well, what do you eat, you know?
So what is whole food plant-based?
It's a food that comes from the ground. It's less altered by man. It's less processed by man.
Like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, and nuts and seeds to a lesser extent.
We're not talking about unhealthy plant-based eating. We're talking about whole foods.
I take away all their meat and all their dairy and all their oil, and they look at me, they go, Dr. McDougall, I got nothing to eat. There's nothing for me to eat at all, nothing. I say, yes, there is. And then I show them the key, which you have to know, or you will fail. I show them the starch. I say, well, do you like potatoes? Oh, I love potatoes.
Beans and lentils and vegetables you didn't even know existed, and even fruits from other countries.
Turnip, collard, mustard, kale.
Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds.
Black beans, brown rice, salsa, avocados, quinoa.
Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, Napa cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula, and asparagus. You got it.
Always eat too much. Stuff yourself on those berries. They feel good. They feel good in you. They give you energy. You don't have to drink anything. They get so much liquid in them, they feel great. That's one food I love. Spinach or collard greens. You ever think you'd ever say collard greens? I say collard greens. Mustard greens. Where's Jeb? Where's Granny? All of a sudden, Ellie Mae Clampett. You start saying things like the Clampetts when you eat like this, I'll have some mustard greens, some collard greens. 3 pounds of those, steamed, and then like this much apple cider vinegar.
The first thing people say is, I don't have time. When somebody says to me, I don't have time, what I really hear is, I don't want to. If tomorrow I'm going to be diagnosed with cancer, I don't have time for that. But I will have time to do chemo, radiation, surgery, recuperation.
The hardest part about changing your diet and your health is just deciding to do it.
Oh, plant-based diet, I don't think I'd like that. Well, you think that long enough, you probably won't try it. Don't you remember when you were little and Mom put something on your plate and said, well, just try it? No, I don't want to try it. Well, just try it.
It's like riding a bike. You like the idea, you want the outcome. You can read about the technique all day long, but at some point, you've just got to get on the bike and find your balance. And once you find your balance, you just glide. And it's so freeing.
So I started, and I started very seriously. I started every meal, 3 meals a day, which consisted mainly of fruits and vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and it worked. And in about 6 months, I lost 120 pounds. And then over the course of maybe another 6 months, I lost another 100 pounds. So I lost 220 pounds. The diabetes went away within weeks. And the hypertension also went away. I started to feel great.
She's got so much energy today, I can't really keep up with it, to be honest with you.
Recently, I was lucky enough to have an echo done by my coworkers. And she was overwhelmed by what she saw on my echocardiogram. There were no blockages, there's no plaque. The elasticity in my heart is excellent. And she said, we don't really see hearts like this. The number one thing that she said was, Susan, I'm convinced. I see what you eat every day, but this, for me, as a echocardiogram sonographer, this is what sells me. I have reversed disease. The damage that hypertension does to your heart and type 2 diabetes, it was reversed in the last 5 years from eating this way.
The first thing I noticed was that I didn't have all those greasy dishes. And then I noticed that my food bill was lower. And then I noticed that I felt better. After all, if you have all those greasy dishes, think what the inside of your intestine must look like.
The vast majority of the world subsists on rice and beans for fractions of what we pay for food.
The thing people have to understand is that it is not expensive to eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. Sure, if you go out to restaurants or buy vegan processed food, it is. But where I live, in the ethnic markets in the area in Los Angeles, a pound of beans are 49 cents. And you get it, cook it in your pressure cooker, you're done in 10 minutes.
For me, I'm not buying meat anymore. I'm not buying dairy anymore.
When in season, I can go to my local farmer's market.
And when I explain to them, they ask for like, how can I do this really? And I say, well, you can actually buy a 25-pound bag of brown rice for $25. You can buy a 20-pound bag of whatever your favorite bean is for $20, and a bunch of fresh frozen vegetables for 99 cents a bag. And you have a meals for a month for 2 people for 60, 70 bucks. And they look at me like, oh, I never thought of that.
You're not eating the cheeses and the meat and the eggs, and so the average family is going to save a lot of money. Plus, you're not going to be in the line at the pharmacy counter as much. And if diet changes can start to cut that down, you're saving serious money.
We went in and ransacked our pantries, our refrigerators, our freezers, start emptying things out, taking out all the things with the oils, the sugars, the processed foods, got rid of the meats.
From one day to the other, our lifestyle changed completely. We threw away everything we had, and we went to the store and bought new food, and we started.
By the time we got from the TV room into the kitchen, he said we shouldn't have any more animal products in our house. I was like, yay!
We just switched like that, and
Yeah.
and then there was a moment where we said, well, what about the children? I said, it's not a democracy. They're just along for the ride.
I want to feel better. Looking back at where I was just 11 months ago, I don't even recognize that person. I could not imagine the drastic changes that we've seen in less than a year. Not only the physical changes of the weight loss, but coming off medication, I feel good on the inside. I don't hurt anymore. My knees don't hurt. I feel better now than I did when I was in high school. Making this lifestyle change to a whole food, plant-based way of eating is the absolute best decision I've ever made in my life.
It's not so much about trying to invent a new way of life, but rather discovering the foods that are right here in front of you. So it's about shopping in the produce department.
It's literally about knowing which aisles to walk down in your supermarket, which stuff to grab, and which stuff to just keep walking right past.
The first priority is to eat whole, unrefined plants and to avoid animal-sourced foods and foods that are processed.
A fresh roasted beet. Oh, I get really excited about produce.
The foods that don't require a label tend to be the highest in nutrients and most beneficial for your health. Things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils.
However, there are a lot of foods that do have labels. I'm talking about your frozen pizza that's got a dozen ingredients in the crust and a dozen more in the toppings.
My God, there are paragraphs of ingredients. You don't want that. Especially you don't want the mono and diglycerides, you don't want the added oil, and there are usually 4 or 5 or 6 different ways that they're stuffing sugar at you.
For example, we'll pick up Raisin Bran, and I'll show folks, okay, tell me how much sugar is in that per serving and how much fiber is in that per serving. They very quickly realize that often they may be eating for breakfast something that is a bowl full of sugar.
You can pick up a jar of spaghetti sauce, and it'll have sugar in it.
Now, that being said, there are plenty of packaged foods that can be a part of a healthy diet. For example, canned vegetables, frozen fruits and vegetables. However, the way they're packaged matters a great deal, and the way they're processed matters. So in teaching people about label reading, I tell them if it has a package, turn it over and look at the label.
So let's take a look at this one because it looks really promising. It says 100% whole grain. It also says heart healthy and a good source of fiber. So let's take a look at the ingredients just to make sure. Whole wheat flour, water, sugar. Sugar's the third ingredient. It's also got soybean oil in it and those mono and diglycerides that we don't want. So again, it's so important to read those labels.
With nothing to lose, we decided to just try it out and see how things went. And so we decided to do it for a month, and the pounds just started to fall away. I think I lost 14 pounds that first month. So over the course of the next 18 months, I proceeded to lose half of my body weight for a total of about 130 pounds. It's never too late to feel young, to lose weight, feel energetic, to enjoy your family, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and be able to help heal yourself with food.
I eat amazing food that tastes, smell, and look amazing. I'm not eating grass.
I am so satisfied. I love my food.
I eat so many different things now, and I try new things. Like, I never would have tried Indian or Ethiopian or Thai, and they're my favorite, and I would have missed those had I not become plant-based.
With plant-based cuisine, we can create all the flavors, textures, satisfying feelings that you always want from a meal.
Let's demystify this notion that if you are a plant-based eater, you are giving up everything. If food tastes good, food tastes good, regardless of what it's made of.
Hi, good morning. Hey, Doc. Good to see you. Welcome back. Hi, how are you, Yvonne?
Good.
When I first heard about this, I thought it was a bunch of malarkey, And then a challenge was made, try it. What does it hurt? So I tried it.
Without medication, your cholesterol was 300 range.
Yes, previously.
Okay. And now, without medications and making some changes in your diet, your cholesterol is 171.
Really?
Yeah. So it's almost half of what it was before on no medication. Your triglycerides have dropped another 20 points. Both your cholesterol and your triglycerides are safely in the normal range.
Sweet.
On no medication.
That is proof to me. You can't lie in the numbers, and you can't lie with shedding the weight. And I felt great. So we kept on going with it, and it's working. I was told and I was convinced by my doctor, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life because you're just genetically predisposed to be this way. And it took this to prove to me that's not true. I'm eating plant-based, whole foods, and my cholesterol is no longer an issue. I feel as good as I did when I was 20.
A lot of people think that when they go plant-based, it's going to be really difficult and the cooking is going to be really involved and involve 15 to 20 ingredients, but it's not. One of my favorite things to make is my garlic Alfredo sauce. It's just 7 ingredients. Basically just start out with chopping some onions, chopping some garlic, throw it in a little bit of vegetable broth on a pan, saute it for about 8 minutes until all the broth is evaporated, and then you just add it to your blender, and you're going to want to add the cooked vegetables, the remaining broth, which is another cup. I have a half a cup of cashews. Now, if you don't have a high-powered blender, you're gonna have to soak your cashews for about 5 to 6 hours. Otherwise, they're gonna turn out gritty, and you don't want that in your sauce. You're gonna want it thick and creamy and smooth. A 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast. That's gonna give it a depth of flavor and a little bit of cheesy undertone. 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Blend it up, and you got some delicious Alfredo sauce, and pour it over some cooked pasta. And everybody's gonna be shocked that there's no dairy and there's no butter or cheese in it. It's really, really delicious. It's just as rich as traditional Alfredo sauce, but it's actually good for you.
It's about just being creative. It's about not so much seeing roadblocks, but rather seeing the opportunities that come with these new aspirations that you may have.
There are 3 reasons to eat out. 1, you don't have to do the dishes. 2, the ambiance. 3, companionship. You never go out to eat to further destroy endothelial cells, okay? Everybody says, well, gosh, Dr. Esselstyn, it's so hard. Aren't they going to have some of these places have oil? Yeah, all of them. When the waiter or the waitress comes to your table, you turn in your seat, take your glasses off, look them squarely in the eye. You must understand that I am deathly allergic to a single drop of any oil. Now, you get creative.
Can I have part of this item on the menu mixed with part of this and put it together? Then the chefs are really actually, if you just ask the question, they're very excited to create something for you.
We have to be that change. We have to be the ones to ask, and hopefully soon enough demands that we have organic plant-based foods in restaurants across the country.
We adopted this lifestyle on December 3rd of 2011.
Within days, 3 to 4 days, I start to see my sugars plummet, and I'm seeing my weight drop anywhere between 5 to 7 pounds per week. My psoriasis went away. My heartburn, I've not had heartburn since I adopted this lifestyle. And I'm Mexican. I love spicy food. I eat jalapenos and spices, Indian food. And lo and behold, by the end of January 2012, so not quite 60 days later, I was off all 5 of my medications. 4 to 5 months in, my erectile dysfunction went away. So here we are 3.5 going on 4 years later. My health continues to be normal. My A1C levels, my cholesterol levels, my blood pressures. I'm healthier than I was even 20 years ago. So when my wife and I adopted a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, we basically changed the trajectory of my family's future.
So we're gonna make the cauliflower hot wings, which you're just gonna love. They're really easy. So you start with a head of cauliflower, or you can cheat like me and buy pre-cut florets. Just set those aside and whisk together 1/2 cup of plant-based milk, so just soy milk or almond milk, 1/2 cup of flour. I'm using chickpea flour today, but you can use any flour that you happen to have. Whisk in some garlic powder or some onion powder, or even cayenne if you want it to be hotter, or a little nutritional yeast. Then pour your almond milk into your flour and mix it so it forms a batter. Take each floret and dip it into the batter and shake it off just to coat it. Put it on your baking sheet. Bake it for about 12 minutes at 450 degrees, just until it's golden and fork tender. And then when you're done, toss it with some hot sauce or teriyaki sauce or barbecue sauce. Just mix it together, and then you have your hot wings ready to go.
When we're looking at this plant-based nutrition data, it's more than heart disease and risk factors. It's actually a lot of cancer, a lot of inflammatory diseases such as lupus and Sjogren's syndrome and rheumatoid arthritis. And so, plant-based nutrition and good lifestyle are good for a variety of things, not just heart disease.
At the time, my husband was working for MTV, and he was helping recording artists get really fit for videos, And I said, I want to look like one of them. It was purely vanity. We're going to go to Maui, we're going to get married, and I want to look as good as I feel emotionally. And I want to do it in a healthy way. And that's what he did. It wasn't about starvation. It wasn't about hurting your body. It was about learning how to take care of your body, learning how to nourish my body in a way that would cause me to have a fast metabolism. And most people think about fuel in terms of these big building blocks like protein and carbohydrates and fat, but that's not what it's about. It's about vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and enzymes and things that your cells actually need. I had to eat so much food, more than I'd ever eaten before, and drink all this water and do all this, eat more than I ever had before. And he told me that was gonna make me actually lose weight. So even though I was skeptical, I did it. And in the 4 months, not only did I go from a size 10 to a size 3, but I was really fit, and I'd felt the best I'd ever felt in my entire life. I had no more aches and pains. My joints felt great. I was energetic. When it was time to get my blood tests and everything, I didn't really think it was gonna affect them because that wasn't possible. I just, I thought this was just something that improved how I felt. And so I told my husband, well, whatever this is that you did, I'm gonna eat this way from now on because I feel so good. When I got my next round of blood tests a few months later, all the lupus indicators were negative. The doctor had a medical student with him, and he said, this woman alleges to have lupus, but we're not finding any evidence of it. Maybe there's just an error in the test. Go have your wedding, come back, and we'll test again. And we tested again a few months later, and now even the antibodies for the clots were completely negative. And my blood pressure was coming down to that of an athlete. And my genetically high cholesterol that I was told I could do nothing but blame my parents, that's what my doctor had told me as a kid, that was completely normal and, in fact, optimal. And that's what's happened ever since then. And right now I'm sitting here, and it's been 10 years since that first negative blood test, and there's been no sign of lupus coming back, in spite of me continuing to go on and not only expose myself to those things they said I shouldn't, like going out in the sunshine, but also having 2 children. I have continued to actually get healthier and stronger as the years have gone by.
I think we all love processed food for their convenience, but what if you could have the convenience without the processed food part? One of my favorites is macaroni and cheese in a box, which I grew up with like everybody else and used to love. So I've come up with a vegan version that's whole foods. It's something you can keep in your pantry in a jar, pull it out, And take a little cup of it and just mix it up with some non-dairy milk and just pour it over some noodles, and you got an instant, easy dish. Comes together in about 30 seconds, so you better watch carefully or you'll miss it. All right, first I've got a cup of cashews. They go right into my food processor, along with some nutritional yeast and some herbs and spices. Put it in your food processor. You just let it whir for about 3 minutes, and that's it. That mix is ready, good to go in your pantry, ready for you anytime you want it.
Free. At 43 years old, I am free. I spent a decade and a half trapped. My body, I thought, was my tomb. This is where I'm gonna be. I have no way out. There's no escape. And then to find out that not only can I escape, but I can come out on the other side like a whole different person. This doesn't take a lifetime. You can fix you. In the first 3 months, I lost 70 pounds. I was too big to do any kind of rigorous exercise. I was 15 minutes on a flat, slow treadmill because that was all I could do. About a 6-month mark, I was down 107 pounds. You'd have told me from a 60-plus inch waist to 30-inch waist in less than 2 years, I'd have said no way. I didn't just lose weight. I'm not just thinner. I'm healthier, completely healthier. The thing about Dr. Stoll that set him apart from every other doctor, he sat me down and said, let me write you some recipes. And him writing those recipes, he was more willing to write the recipes first before the prescriptions, and it changed everything. There are doctors that are waking up because you can't deny the results. I'm just one person, but there's millions of me out there that are experiencing the same results that we didn't receive on meds. I look in the mirror now and I think that we're not talking 10 years ago, we're talking 20 months ago. And I don't even know that person when I see those pictures. It's a lifestyle. And that's the key thing. People ask me all the time, so how long are you gonna do this? And I tell them, plan on living to about 90, 95. So, a long time, because I'm never going back. I'm never going back.
After about 2 weeks, the things I noticed was I had a lot more energy. I could walk a lot further and I could walk a lot faster. I dropped a bunch of weight. My cholesterol dropped like a rock. Everything seemed to come back into line.
He now rides a bike. I mean, we go for long bike rides.
When I got out of the hospital, I don't know how many medications I had, and I'm off all that now.
He walks miles and is giving Greg back to me.
There's all kinds of diets, but this is a way of life.
Most wives take for granted what a gift a husband is and be able to do those things with their husband. And I'm telling you, I am so thankful.
The doctor called me at home, and he says, hey, I just got your blood work back from the lab, and I was reviewing your results, and you're no longer diabetic. It's really good. Sorry.
We've had this astonishing experience that we've lived through, and it's kind of shaken us awake as far as what's important in life.
That's what so many of us in healthcare want, is to make these changes in people's lives.
It is the most effective and powerful way to treat the broad range of illness that a primary care doctor confronts.
It's just the easiest thing you can do to have better health. It's low-hanging fruit, literally and figuratively.
I did not know how bad I felt until I felt good.
I'm sure there are times in my life when I was younger that I felt better, but there's no time I remember feeling better.
You will lose weight. You will lose your high blood pressure. You will lose your diabetes. You will feel better. You will lose your risk for stroke. You'll lose your risk for dementia. So there are side effects.
Dr. Esselstyn entered my life at the worst time in my life. And I felt like he was a godsend.
My life changed. It's the single best thing I've ever done, by far.
I believe that my chance of getting coronary artery disease
is zero.
Whole food plant-based nutrition is indeed the answer to the healthcare crisis in America.
It's all about sustainability of the mind, of the body, and of the planet.
Change doesn't come from the leadership down. The leadership only changes when people wake up and demand it, demand that change.
You know, today is a different day. Today is a new opportunity to live the life that you want to live. Not just the one that you're living, but the one that you truly, really want to live.
2 weeks, 3 weeks, all you gotta do is try it.
There are people in the world that do it for ethical reasons. There are people that do it for health reasons, and there are people that do it for environmental reasons. And ultimately, it doesn't matter why you do it, because it's a win-win-win.
Finding a plant-based diet gave me freedom. Freedom that all the other fad diets and gadgets and even my doctor didn't give me.
I've been in medicine for over 30 years, and for the very first time, I can truly look someone in the eye and I can say, I can heal you.
Realize that there are people who love you, who need you to do this because they need you in their life as well.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, it saved my marriage.
I'm very proud of her.
This is progressive medicine. This is correct medicine. This is where medicine should be.
The vegetables and the fruits and the whole grains and the beans, those foods have power that you never imagined. And it's time to put it to work.
Come on. What's on your plate?